record sales are soaring, and he just says, okay, without all that peer-to-peer, Napster, what's it called today, I would be better off. And I think this is really something which has got a right. So I would like to ask, what's your position to that? If you're grateful that, you can of course afford it, but...
So before the record was invented, before the radio was invented, the most popular, richest, most successful performers, musicians in the world had charisma. They could come up on stage and they could just really entertain the hell out of you. Maybe they weren't the greatest musicians, but they were the greatest showmen. And with the advent of, and the people who didn't succeed in that era were people who were great musicians but stood there like a statue and just didn't perform at all. Those people had like no career to speak of, no one wanted to book them in, and they just kind of trundled along and didn't really make a living at it and had to become hobbyists. When the radio was invented, when the record was invented, it reversed. And all of a sudden, what mattered wasn't how good you sounded on stage, or how good you were on stage, how good you looked on stage, because no one could see you through the record, no one could see you through the radio. What mattered was how good you sounded. And all of those charismatics ended up without a job. They ended up driving taxis. And when the Marconi Trust, you know, the people who created the radio, actually, the people who stole the radio from Tesla, went to them and said, you know, we've got this business model for you. You know, we collect money from advertisers and you give us your recordings and you put them on the radio. They said, well, what business do you have telling me that I have to retreat into some back room, into a dingy basement, and toil as a mere clerk over my music, and then slide it under the door and give it to you to present to my audience? I'm a performer. I do something as old and as holy as that first story that was told in front of the first fire in the first cave, and I have the right to earn a living that way. But the fact is that the radio opened the door to 1,000 times more musicians who made 1,000 times more music and reached an audience larger than ever before. 70 years later, the spiritual descendants of the people who took away the work from the charismatics, they're saying, what business do you have telling me that my recordings will just be copied from now on, and to make a living I have to get on a stage? I'm not a trained monkey. I'm a white-collar worker. I labor indoors. When I'm finished with my muse, I slide the work under the door, and some bourgeois takes it and gives it to the audience and deals with the dirty business of commerce. You have no right telling me how I have to earn a living. But technology giveth and technology taketh away. And the point of a copyright system at the end of the day can't be to ensure that one artist or another artist has a living. The point of a copyright system at the end of the day has to be to ensure that the most creativity that as a society we can make happens. You know, imagine as a Gedanken experiment that I could create a film industry based on a copyright system that made one movie every year, but that movie earned €1 trillion for the studios, and no other movies were made, right? Well, this would be an enormously commercially successful copyright system, but I think most of us would describe it as a failure, right? What we wanted of a copyright system isn't enrichment first, it's creativity first, and enrichment second. Enrichment is a way to incentivize people to be creative and to work at their creative work. And so, it's true that your brother is not going to find himself with an income selling recordings from now on. I think that's kind of a given. You know, every Christmas, every year,